Hey guys, you are watching and listening to K100 Sports. Took a couple of weeks off because I was away in Dubai, Saudi and Rome. And during that time, I decided to make an application for monetization here for the channel. Unfortunately, that meant we couldn't use the channel for 2 weeks while they were reviewing our content. We've now been accepted. We now need to secure 3,000 viewing hours and then we will be able to monetize. So the bar is there, we just need to accumulate the hours. So if you guys have watched videos already, go back and watch them. You don't need to actually watch them, you just need to push play and just walk away and do something else. If as many people can do that as possible, we will get to the hours as quick as possible and then we will be monetized. And then I'll have more incentive to do more videos. So that was the reason for the break. And it has delayed our NFL mid-season report. So I'm still going to do that on this episode, but I'm going to do it a lot quicker because it doesn't seem as relevant as it did a couple of weeks back. The first thing I want to touch on is Donald Trump is back as the president of the USA, president number 47, and it tastes so good. And as I said on my last podcast, this isn't just because we landed futures on this. We've won over 5 units on Trump. Our betting started back in July 2023 when it looked like he was going up against Biden. They then put in Kamala Harris, and I was a little bit concerned at first because I knew the media would 100% be behind her and they would be able to manipulate people. But they then proceeded to run one of the worst campaigns in the history of politics. Their campaign was led by the use of celebrities, which people don't care about anymore. And I know this because I deal in autographs, and the only autographs that sell for decent money in this day and age is sports memorabilia. There are 1 or 2 actors and singers who are worth something, but for the most part, people are sick of celebrities. And I think celebrities really jumped the shark during COVID when they put out that video where they were all singing and it showed they were completely out of touch of real people because they were recording songs from their multi-million pound houses while we were all sitting at home struggling, wondering what we were going to do for money. So they showed that they were completely out of touch. No one gives a shit about celebrities. Very few people are going to vote based on what Beyonce and Taylor Swift are doing. And I think people understood millionaires want things to go a certain way because it benefits millionaires. Of course, they want things to stay the same. They're successful. They're making money all the time. They're living in massive houses. Do they want this economy to change? Do they want the world to change when they're among the most successful people on the planet? Do they fuck? And also, I don't want to get too much into the links between Kamala Harris and her past and P. Diddy and Epstein and all the links to that and child pedophilia and trafficking, because this is a gambling channel and we're here to win money, and we did do. But I did think it was a poorly run campaign run primarily on the use of celebrities and abortion. So people were expected to vote based on the choice of their potential grandchildren or children being killed, wanting to have the right and being able to make the decision of do I or do I not want this baby. They actually thought enough people would think to themselves, gee, I wonder if at some point me or my children are going to be so irresponsible that they may need an abortion. I better vote based on that. No, they didn't give a shit about that either. This election was won on policy. Trump had better policies. Trump was actually doing the right interviews with the media. He did Rogan. He was up there constantly pushing his cause, whilst Kamala Harris stayed in the background, didn't talk to the media, picked and chose wherever she went, and basically it was a absolute landslide. I didn't call a landslide, mainly because I was worried about the corruption, and now we know how corrupt the last election was, because you have these idiot Democrats coming on and talking about, where did our 15 million votes go? Where did they go? This can't be real. Trump must have cheated. Where did our 15 million votes go? No, idiots, you never had the 15 million votes in the first place. You need to be asking the actual question, where did the votes come from in the first place? So it's very clear to me that Donald Trump has now won 3 straight elections. Karma has reared its head. Justice has been served. The world is in a better place. Hopefully we can now move forward and end this woke agenda and all of these other agendas, these liberal leftist bullshit agendas that we have to suffer through. The only thing I will say, and I'll say this with caution, this isn't the end of it, because they are going to come back with a vengeance. They're already questioning the result. They're already crying on social media saying they're going to do this, that, and the other. And everything, at least initially, the people who are woke, and when you're looking at the mainstream media, they're going to become even more woke, for at least temporarily. They're going to shove everything down your throat. When you look at movies, when you look at the piece of shit that recent Joker film was, when you look at how they tried to turn Buzz Lightyear gay, all of this stuff is going to get worse. The mainstream media and Hollywood and all the likes of that are not going to stop. They are going to really try and erase this. They're really going to try and push this woke agenda. It's not done. It is a good sign that Trump's come out straight away and clamped down on social media companies and clamped down on transgenderism and trans surgery and is trying to protect kids. That's a great start. But don't think that they're dead and buried, because they are going to try and combat this with something. We are just at the beginning. Yes, we are winning the game, and we have just intercepted the ball and run it into the end zone for a pick 6. We're up. And by having the Senate and winning the popular vote as well, we have now recovered a fumble and had the opportunity to score again. So we are well up in this game, but we are only in the second quarter. We are not only at halftime at this point. And the woke leftist liberal mob are certainly not dead and buried at this point. Moving on to the NFL portion of this show, we're going to just gloss over the divisions, because that seems like the most logical way to do this. Just to gloss over the divisions, say who I think is going to end up winning said division and who might get through via the playoffs. So at the moment in the AFC East, this is a very quick one. The Bills are going to win it. The only thing I question about the Bills moving forward is their motivation. It's one thing to just play for seeding, and it's another thing when you're desperate and you're trying to either win a division or just get to the playoffs in general. But here, they know they're going to win the division, and it's just a case of, do they realistically believe that they can catch up with the Chiefs, who are 8-0? If they don't, you may see some flat performances, particularly away from home. I don't think they're going to turn in a sleeper performance in Western New York in front of their home supporters. But you could see them turning in some sleeper performances on the road as they try to maybe rest players towards the end of the season, looking ahead to the playoffs and not worrying too much about if they're going to be the 3 or 4 seed. If they can be the 2 seed or the 1 seed, then I think they'll play hard until the end. But at the moment, it does look like the Chiefs have that locked up. And at the moment, it could be between the Bills and the Ravens for number 2. The Jets, they do have one of the easiest schedules remaining, but that hasn't really helped them so far. They are still at 3-16. I think it all comes down to today. You may be watching this after today's game, But I think if the Jets can pick up a win against the Cardinals, they are in a good position to make a run for the playoffs. Because if you look at the East, if you look at the AFC in general, nobody is really head and shoulders above when you're looking outside of those top three positions. Underneath the Bills, you have Jets second in division at 3-6. In the West, the Chargers are 5-3 and the Broncos are 5-4. And while I do expect the Chargers to be there, the Broncos are about to face a very, very hard set of games. Like the second half of the season is substantially harder than the first half of the season. In the North, it's possible that you could see three teams coming out of the North. At the moment, the Steelers and the Ravens are there. It's just a case of who wins the division. And the Bengals are 4-6, but they have played close games with three Super Bowl contenders. They narrowly lost to the Chiefs. They've narrowly lost to the Ravens. They've played three close games with two Super Bowl contenders. They've narrowly lost to the Ravens twice. So I do believe the Bengals are still in with an outside chance. I would rank their chances higher than the Jets. And when you're looking at the South, it does look like the Texans will win that, even though they haven't really been that good. I'm not high on the Texans. They do strike me as a team who could lose in the first game of the playoffs. Behind them, you have the Colts at 4-5 and nobody else under that. So they have a big job on their hands, the Colts, if they are going to get into the playoffs. And I would say, choosing between themselves and the Jets and the Bengals, I would say that the Colts are probably the last ranked team, or I would power rank them last.
How you doing, man?
So to summarise, we have the division winners and they will be the Bills, the Chiefs, probably the Ravens narrowly ahead of the Steelers, and then we have the Texans. The three other teams going through, I feel, will be the Steelers, who will finish runners-up to the Ravens, but will still have a significant winning record. And then the Chargers. Then there's only one spot left, and that spot will be contested between the Jets, the Bengals, and possibly the Colts. So that is how the AFC East is going to play out, in my opinion. I think the Dolphins are done. I think the Broncos have a very difficult second half of the season. I don't see the Browns doing anything. And ultimately, I don't see anybody coming up from behind the Colts. So I've probably told you everything you already know. So you probably want me to make a pick. And I would lean that the Bengals go through as the 7th seed ahead of the Jets. But don't be massively surprised if it is the Colts, who I am somewhat writing off here on this segment. Moving on to the NFC, and it is a lot more difficult to get into the playoffs via the NFC than it is via the AFC. We have a lot more teams here contending for the playoffs. When you're looking at a division like the West, you're looking at potentially all four teams wanting to compete for the playoffs, but that can't happen. It's very likely that it's only going to be one, because the NFC North is so strong, because you're looking at three, maybe even four playoff contenders, but definitely three teams who are very likely to be there. So it's so difficult to pick who's going to come out of the NFC, but we're going to give it a go here. The NFC East is going to be contested by the Eagles and the Commanders. Both of these teams should be going through to the playoffs. And for me, the winner of the NFC East will be determined by the games between the two. Now, this weekend could be crucial, because the Eagles go to the Cowboys, who they've not done well against, and the Commanders, they face the best defense they've faced so far this season. So Jalen Williams will face a big test going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Eagles have the advantage this weekend, because this isn't the same Cowboys team. They don't have Prescott. They're playing Cooper Rush. Despite the fact he has a really good ATS record, the Cowboys were a lot more stable last time he had a consistent run in the team. And this is a big opportunity for the Eagles to not only beat their rivals, but beat them convincingly by margin. As for the Commanders, as I said, they face a more difficult task. And if they can pass this test, it's another huge hurdle for the Commanders, who I obviously wished we hedged against earlier when they're available at plus 400. But at that point in time, we didn't know they're for real. And now we know Jalen Daniels and the Commanders are for real, and they're improving in all areas. It's too late to get a decent hedge on them. The plus 400 was available. But this weekend, if we see the Commanders win and the Eagles win, it's very likely that this division is going to turn into a pick'em going into Thursday's game where they play each other. So we could see prices of minus 10 to 11, minus 10 to 11 on both of these, 10 to 11, 10 to 11, minus 110 on both of these teams. I'm just hoping that the Eagles can come out on top. but it will be more out of hope than expectation if the Commanders find a way to beat the Steelers, and beating Mike Tomlin as an underdog especially is a very difficult assignment. And we'll just have to see what happens in the East. But both of these two teams are going to be playing in the playoffs. As for the West, I already spoke about this division, and it's very likely that only one team comes through. The Cardinals are at 5-4. You have the Rams and the 49ers tied at 4-4, but the Rams have the easiest schedule out of the bunch. And then the Seahawks are down at 4-5. This is very, very tight. And I think it's very important that you win the division here. Otherwise, you won't be playing playoff football. And I glean that the 49ers will find a way to do it. They came out of the bye week last year very strong. I expect them to do that again. McCaffrey's back. I don't think he's going to have a huge influence in today's games, but I do think between now and the end of the regular season that he'll help the 49ers put a run together, and they'll show that they are the cream of the crop. I don't think they're going to be getting to another Super Bowl this year, as I do think there are better teams in the NFC, namely Detroit, who we'll talk about now. Detroit lead the NFC North, and they are my pick to be the number one seed. They are now ahead of the Vikings, who made a blistering start to the season. They're at 7-1. The Vikings are at 6-2. The Packers at 6-3, and the Bears at 4-4. I think the Bears will regress now in the second half of the season, but I do believe the Lions, Vikings, and Packers will all find a way to get there now with their current records. I think the Lions will win this division. I think the Lions will be the number one seed. But with 10 or around about 10 or 11 wins, I think the Vikings maybe do a bit better than that because their schedule is not difficult. I think all three of these teams will be playing playoff football. And the last division is probably the weakest one. It's the South. This is another one where you need to win. The Falcons are at 6-3, the Bucks at 4-5, and the others are at 2-7. One thing I will say about this division is that the Bucks are getting players back, and they have the number one easiest schedule remaining in the entire NFL. So that's going to give them a real shot of challenging for the playoffs if they can beat what's in front of them. Because it's one thing to have an easy schedule on paper. It's another thing to actually win those games. But the Bucks do have a chance of still challenging. But I do feel after today's game, where they are minus 6 point underdogs, plus 6 point underdogs, I feel after the loss against the 49ers, it'll be more of an uphill task because 4-5 becomes 4-6, and therefore that makes you less likely to make a playoff run. But the schedule that they have definitely puts them in the conversation for me. So closing out, I will be going for the Eagles to win the East because that's what I want to happen more so than what I think. The San Francisco 49ers for the West, the Lions for the North, and we're going to take the Falcons for the South because they have a commanding lead at this point in time. As for who joins them, I've already said I think that the Vikings and the Packers will be there. I don't expect any additional teams from the South. I don't expect any additional teams from the West. And therefore, the seventh team joining those teams will be the Commanders. Now, if this isn't in order, I actually believe that the Packers will actually end up being the seventh seed and the last team that probably get through. But they are the 7 teams that I like in the NFC. So that is my mid-season report for the NFL. I was hoping to do something more in-depth. I think during the recap show with Cav, we'll be talking more about this as we recap these games. We'll be looking at some updated futures prices as a result of today's games. But that's it for me for now. Enjoy today's games. Hopefully we can make some money. And thank God Donald Trump is back as the president.
Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this?